Okay, we're going to go over a quick review of how to import a job into the Fiery Rip, and this is uh, pretty simple. We go to the Import tab up here at the top, and we're going to navigate to our folder, and I'm going to use this job here as a sample. I believe it's Perla's business card, because we're going to go over what the objective of this demo is to kind of go over the imposition process. So once we import the job, it should just pop in up at the top here. And there we are. It's a little bit sluggish, but so just kind of bear with me. But once the job comes in, make sure you're in the held queue, because over here on the left you've got 5 different queues where the job could be. You might be looking over here going, I don't see my job. Well, you imported it into the hold queue or held queue. Make sure you're there, and we always like to keep it sorted by date with the latest files up at the top. But once we get it in there, go to right-click the mouse and go to Impose. And when you get into the Impose window, you have to know a couple of things, and one of them is you have to know what size paper you're printing on and how it's going to be loaded and which tray you're going to put it in. And we'll let my software launch here. So again, the software is a little bit sluggish. We do have a service call on that that's coming in, so it's coming in. But we want to kind of focus our attention over here under settings, and we notice that we have 2 pages. On her card we have a front and a back, and so as that kind of finishes populating, we'll come over here to the right side. So the first thing we want to look at is under the Normal tab. You can see that it has 3 options. We want to get into the Gang Up because we're trying to produce multiple copies of this. And right underneath Gang Up it says Unique. Well, we want it to repeat. And there's other options. We'll get into that a little bit later. And then hers is a 2-sided card, so we want to make sure that we have duplex set to on. And right here where it says sheet, it needs to know what size paper you're going to run that on. Well, depending on what you have loaded into the printer, to the Xerox, that's kind of what you would put there. So just for what we've got, I've got something loaded over here, and the SEF stands for short edge feed, 8.5 by 11. LEF is long edge feed. So it depends on whatever you're printing on. I'm going to choose this because I already have this paper loaded, but I want you to focus down here now under on rows and columns. If I put this, I'm going to print this 4 up, so I got 2 rows and 2 columns. And that's good enough for what we're doing, because if not, it'll complicate things over at the cutting. If we were to put this on a larger sheet, we certainly can print up to 12 by 18, and I can say print this many on the screen, and that looks great, and there's fewer impressions and fewer clicks on the printer, but it's going to require a lot more work over at the cutter. So I'm just trying to simplify that. I just recommend for this type of job with the quantities that we're running, just run it on 8.5 by 11. You can see that I've got too many on there now that it's kind of bleeding off the page. So I'm going to get back to 2 columns, 2 rows, and we can control the space in between up underneath here where it says gutter, but we don't need to worry about that right now. At this point, we're kind of done with the imposition software. We're just going to close the window, let it save it what it wants to save, but notice it gives it a different extension, a DBP extension. That's the actual file that we want to print. So back over here in the held queue, we're going to select the job and get back into the properties just by double clicking. And you notice this is dimmed out because that was set in the imposition software. So it knows that you've already imposed this job to print on 8.5 by 11 short edge feed. And in this case, I've got some 8.5 by 11 thrown in tray 2, so I'm going to select that, and off it goes. So it's going to take a few minutes to print, but we'll just assume that it prints correctly, but that's pretty much the imposition software and what you need to know. So here is the end result after we impose the file and output it as a duplexed imposition plan 4 up. And you can see that they both align back to back. And that's one thing, after it comes out of the digital press, you want to make sure that the front and back do align properly. You kind of have to hold it up to the light to check your crop marks to see if they hit accurately. You can't adjust that on the digital press. So if they don't align perfectly, we might have to do an image shift to get the front and the back to align perfectly. One of the things I would just want to point out here, Perla, I thought, did a good job of creating her design with fairly loose registration requirements, meaning exact position front to back. You notice we don't have anything extremely close around the edges, so that if the cutting or the position is a little bit off, you're not going to see it. And again, we got plenty of white space around here. It might be a little tight on this margin here, but overall, I felt like the design is loose enough to where if the cutting and the printing isn't perfect, you've got a little bit of wiggle room.